Good evening, everyone. This is Nivedita Lahiri, the CEO of Counsel Academy, welcoming you all to today's very exciting event on the healing power of energy medicine. Energy, mainly positive energy, is known to heal away the body of many diverse ailments using the power of the mind. Hence, the healing power of energy has now been referred to as an extension to treatment processes. And I cannot wait to learn more about this. Counsel Academy is delighted to welcome Dr. Abhishek Ghosh, founder of Bleuauras and an expert in energy medicine, as a speaker in this special event today. Not only is he a specialized healing energy consultant, Reiki and meditation coach, but he is also a proof of how the power of energy healed him of certain conditions he had as a teenager. Without further delay, I welcome Dr. Ghosh on stage, and to you, please feel free to ask him any questions you might have. Abhishek, the stage is yours.
Hi, everyone, and this is myself, Abhishek, and I'm the founder at Bleuauras. At the very beginning, I would like to thank Dr. Nivedita Lahiri of Counsel Academy for inviting me to present this talk. And before I go into the details, I want to make a disclaimer that today's webinar is going to be a very informal webinar on energy medicine, and it sums up some of the realizations that I had in my life. But the idea is to make it very easy and accessible to everyone who is watching or who will be watching this video later. What is energy medicine and why we think that everything is connected, which is the title of the talk. As we move forward with the story, you will probably realize by the end of the webinar that everything is connected. The point of my seminar is not to make you feel that there is an answer, but rather to make you think that there could be a possible answer. That's the idea. So, once again, I would like to thank everyone in the audience who is watching or will be watching this webinar from Canada, from US, or other parts of the world, including India. So, let's get going. So, at the very beginning, I would like to start this whole presentation by asking two questions. And I think at some point in your life, you had this question in your mind, or it often comes and goes. There are many questions indeed in the world of science or medicine, but I have picked up two of my favorite. So, the first one is the vaccination strategy that we often talk about, that we have seen, or probably we have faced during the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that the vaccination strategy was very time specific. It wasn't fully effective because we know that the COVID-19 virus undergoes very quick mutation. The point I'm trying to make here is vaccination only provides an answer which is temporary. We cannot say that we have the final answer to the problem of COVID-19. And we know that because we have read news and many updates for a couple years or more that different people reacted to the vaccination and showed different response. Some were indeed fatal. So the problem is way more complex than we think. Now let's come to the second point. We know about one thing in modern medicine, particularly in the field of cancer. It's called spontaneous remission. What it means, for in easy terms, it just means that sometimes we see that the patient who is undergoing normal cancer treatment according to the standard medicine will suddenly show a rapid improvement and the tumor will vanish. This is known as spontaneous remission. Clinicians or oncologists till date are unable to resolve the mechanism behind this problem. Why this happens all of a sudden? They probably summarize the happening with a single word called, it's probably a miracle. And I'm sure that you have seen people like this who has underwent spontaneous remission. It's a very rare event, but is it a miracle or there is a possible mechanism? Medical science, or rather the modern medicine, doesn't have a clear-cut answer for this kind of a phenomenon in cancer. So these two questions immediately tells you that even though we are subjected to modern medicine to find some answers, there are many questions which are very unresolved. Probably we will get the answer in next few years or decade, or who knows, maybe in the next century. So we don't have all the answers. But why is that? Why we lack some answers to the problem? Where is the gap in the knowledge? This webinar will address that gap in the knowledge. Let's move on to the next slide. So fundamentally, I would like to start a talk on energy medicine to justify it with the fact that what is energy? As you know, that this is a high school definition of energy, and I still love it because this definition still stands in the field of energy medicine, because energy medicine essentially is the marriage of two things. One is medicine and the second one is energy. So what is energy? So energy is defined as the capacity for doing work. It is expressed in many units, and one of the units is joules. This is something we probably have learned in grade 5 or 6. But again, the point is the concept of energy hasn't changed. It's always there. It's around us and it's within us. But energy is something that we don't see sometimes, but it can be converted from one form to the other. This is also something we know. Now, I have told you about energy. Then what is energy medicine? Let's look into the definition of energy medicine. I have to tell you, the concept of energy medicine is not very new, but the term energy medicine is fairly recent. So let's read about the definition of energy medicine, which I'm just going to plainly read. The word energy medicine was coined by researchers who actually gathered in US in 80s. So they figured out the term. But what it is the interaction of energetic informational cues with the biological system. And when this marriage happens of energetics and the biological system, it leads to a balanced state, or what we call as biologists homeostasis in a living organism. That is the state we always want to achieve as a target in energy medicine. And you can say that's a well-being state, or it's a state which is disease-free. When this balance or homeostasis is disrupted, we fall into some sort of a abnormal situation, or which we call in plain terms as disease or some kind of a pathological condition. So we always have to achieve this homeostasis. The good part is today the field of energy medicine is widely recognized. NIH has recognized energy medicine in 90s as one of the branches of CAMS. And when I say CAMS, all I mean is complementary and alternative medicine, which is made up of many elements. I'm not going to go into those for today's webinar, but energy medicine is one of the major arm under CAM, which is now recognized by NIH. So that's all about energy medicine. Now, energy medicine deals with energy, I have told you, but this is a very specific energy that it deals with. It deals with something called subtle energy. A more popular name in the world of energy medicine experts is biofield or biofield energy. I already told you that the field of energy medicine is not very new. As a matter of fact, you will realize just in 2 seconds that different cultures, different spiritual practices or religious practices at different times of the century has identified this energy, subtle energy, biofield, or whatever you may call it. But they gave a specific name to that. But collectively, they are all biofield. And let's get into some example. So in the traditional Chinese medicine, this energy has been referred to as qi. And they propose that the energy is always moving from one part of the organism and going to the other part. But how they are communicating? They are communicating through energy channels which are known as meridians. Whereas in the Indian tradition, the yoga identified the same biofield energy and named it as prana. And again, it proposed that in a human body, as you can see in the picture on the left, there are different specific centers where there is a concentration or dominance of this biofield energy, each associated with a physical organ. And this concentrated area where the energy is dominant is spread over the entire body, or rather across the spinal cord. Today we call them, or we refer them as the chakra, which essentially means wheels. In Japanese Reiki, this energy has been referred as ki with a K. Sufism, let's move on. Again, they have referred to biofield with a new name, Baraka. The Iroquois tradition has referred to the same energy as Orenda, and finally, Christianity referred to this subtle energy as Holy Spirit. But they are all the same. They are all the same energy that we are referring to. They are communicating with each other within the body, or rather, they are flowing from one part of the body to other part of the body, and constantly interacting with the physical body to achieve a state of homeostasis, which I just showed you in the previous slide. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what is a biofield, and maybe you are one of the practitioners from the respective field I have shown you here, and you refer to biofield with a specific name. If you are a yoga therapist or a yoga practitioner, you might call it prana. If you're a Reiki practitioner, you might refer it as ki. So this is all about biofield. Now we are slowly getting into the area of the problem of energy medicine. And this is a big problem here. So we really have to go a little bit into the history. And that's why at the beginning I told you that this is really a storytelling session. It's not very heavy so that everyone can get it. And when we talk about stories, we have to talk about history a bit. So I'll tell you a little story from the history. So on the left, you see that there is an image of a mathematician and a philosopher. His name was Rene Descartes. So Descartes was very popular, and mathematicians love him because he is one of the person who discovered the early concepts of algebra. But he also did some other things in his life, and made some gigantic contributions. And even today, we are using some of his work. I'll tell you what they are. So he identified a problem early on and proposed something called a dualism theory. What's the dualism theory in general? So this duality is between the mind and the body. Mind is a mind and body is the physical body. But why is it dual? It's dual because body is something that we all can feel. Like you can feel your face, your cheeks, your hands, but you really cannot feel your mind. So how a mind is communicating with the body? This is the duality that he proposed, and we still call it even today in various fields as a mind-body paradox or a mind-body problem. This problem actually, in his times, created a twofold path of spirituality and science. The good thing about it was both of them coexisted peacefully. So people who were practicing spirituality were living a happy life. People who were scientists were fairly happy in what they were doing. There was no clash. So spirituality was a separate domain and science was a separate domain at the same time. There was no connection. And this was the time when what we call today, or referred today as allopathic medicine, was actually booming. So it became very popular because science was flourishing at this time. But again, despite all those things, there was an issue. There was a gap in the knowledge. And that gap is what integrates mind and the body? What fills up the duality? Hopefully, by end of this webinar, I'll be able to convince you that today we possibly have the answer. But this was the confusion then, mind-body duality. Now, this problem or this duality or the paradox of Descartes was further intensified when someone else joined the field. you can say that they actually magnified the problem, or rather increased the confusion further. And I'll show you that in the next slide. So we all know about physics, we all know about Isaac Newton. So after Descartes, it was the age of Newton, or we call it a Newtonian paradigm. Newton, although we talk about him in the sense of physics, but he has many applications in modern medicine, a lot. So what Newton did is he focused on the materialistic world. So Newton was very much into the science that we could feel and observe, and he focused on the materialistic world. I use the word materialistic here. It simply means that anything that you can feel in the material world, just for example, your wallet, your purse, your car, your watch that you're wearing, is a part of the materialistic world. Newton ruled out the problems of spirituality. He really felt that whatever we see is there and that's it. That's the end of the world. So, again, during the Newtonian time, modern physics or classical physics and modern medicine was becoming even more popular, because I told you that modern medicine rests on the philosophy of Newtonian paradigm. But even then, despite the advent of Newton, there were some questions that we couldn't answer. And that's valid till date. That's valid till 2023. The concept of life, what is cognition, and clear-cut answer to the problem of evolution or human evolution. We still have a lot of gap in the knowledge of these concepts, despite the advent and the popularity of science. But one thing clearly happened after Descartes. Newton's advent intensified the problem. In other words, people started believing, or rather, they started keeping spirituality absolutely away and started believing that whatever is observed, whatever is something, anything that is perceivable, anything that we can perceive, is the real existence. So, reality is what we perceive. So, this created a group or factions or a separatism paradigm. So, all the spiritual people, all or everyone who were practicing spirituality, things which you don't see normally, were going against Newton, and everyone who were believing in the science that we do things, we see things, were getting attracted to the Newtonian philosophy. One of the reasons that we have wonderful answers and research progress made in the modern medicine is because it focuses on the Newtonian paradigm, which is very linear and deterministic. In other words, it focuses on problems which has a linear nature, a very proper and defined start and a defined end and a defined middle. That's why modern medicine is very popular. But the problem happens when we deal with a case, let's say in medicine, which is not very linear. For example, I give a pill and you get cured. Wonderful. This is a linear problem. But I give you a pill, but the problem is now intensified, or there are many other side effects started coming in. It gets complex. Then we have to start a lot of guesswork, and we have to do a lot of permutation combination. Sometimes we don't get into the clear-cut answer. Remember the example of spontaneous remission that I told you. Why a tumor suddenly vanishes without chemotherapy or something like that? No one knows that, because that's a non-linear problem. So hopefully at this point you will realize that why there are limitations of modern medicine. Not to say that it's wrong, but it is only true within a certain nature, or it functions within a certain range or paradigm, which is Newtonian. So this is the world of Newton. But again, Descartes came, proposed a problem. Newton came, the problem got intensified. Spirituality and everything which you don't see was trashed, almost. And everything that you see was accepted. There was a problem because people were still having spiritual experiences. What about that? How to solve that problem? The answer came in the next stage of the century with the discovery of another pioneering thing, which you will see in the next slide. The advent of quantum physics. There are many scientists Whenever we talk about quantum physics, we talk about Einstein, we talk about Max Planck, and many more. Quantum physics and its advent started answering the gap of non-linear problem, dynamic problem, things which does not fit the Newtonian method or Newtonian biology. So why is quantum physics popular and how it was able to answer those questions? Quite simple. Quantum physics, as the word quantum means something very small or discrete, it started looking into the problem, looking into the substances that we don't see with naked eyes. I'll give you an example, like the electrons and the protons that you might have studied or heard about it in chemistry. Quantum physics started addressing those things, and it found remarkable solutions of multidimensional problem and non-linear problem. Okay, so there was some explanation. It also addressed the problem of duality. To some extent, quantum physics started addressing the problem of duality. What duality? The mind body duality. So you have to realize that the mind was separate, the body was separate, the physical body. But with the advent of quantum physics, people started realizing that no, probably they are not separate entities. There must be a connection between them. And once this connection was realized, people started believing in a new concept, or it's called the problem of singularity or holism. Holism or singularity problem means instead of looking at a particular thing in discrete pieces, you see it as a whole. Instead of looking into a disease of pancreas, or let's say a disease of lungs, you start analyzing the entire human body. Think about most of the energy medicine practices which focuses on the entire human body, unlike the modern medicine, which is more targeted to a specific point of origin of the disease or the organ. So, this philosophy was known as the problem or the phenomenon of holism. And from holism, we get the term, or we often use the term, holistic medicine. That's another term we often use, and it came from this problem of singularity. So, when was this happening? All the good things were happening during the 20th century as quantum physics was evolving. But one good thing happened here. Not to say Newton was entirely wrong, he wasn't. Quantum physics complemented the Newtonian science. So we realized somewhere that we need quantum physics. At the same time, we need the classical concepts of physics or the Newtonian side, which we mostly study in the high school or maybe in the university. We mostly cover the Newtonian science. The quantum physics or quantum science is covered less, at least not in the school, to my knowledge. So that's the idea of holism. But I have to tell you, quantum physics was evolving around 20th century. This was mostly in the Europe, Central Europe, and in the West, in the more Western and developed countries. What was happening? Why is this interesting? Why did I tell you this? Because this was not a new phenomenon for rest of the world. Many years ago, centuries ago, thousands of years ago, some countries did realize this phenomenon of quantum physics or quantum dynamics. Probably they did all the studies based on observation, but they addressed this problem way before that Einstein and Max Planck was discovering with maths or quantum physics problem centuries later. And that country was mostly, it was the contribution of the South Asian countries, to be honest. But I will focus on India today, and I'll show you a very interesting timeline in the next slide. So the problem of duality or holism, that you have to address something holistically, was identified in or recognized way before in India. And I'll show you a very quick timeline, not go into the details of this because that will be 2 more webinars. It's beyond the scope of the day. So what was happening, starting from top to bottom, you can see that how the years are actually progressing. So it was around the 1000 BC when India was already having the Vedas, or that was the Vedic period, which were essentially documented, and people started reading about it. And the Vedas focus on the problem of holism or singularity. As we came towards the end of the Vedas, slowly and slowly, the next set of scriptures started coming in. It's called the Upanishads, which started giving a more practical approach. And a lot of quantum physicists, I should tell you, including Schrodinger, recognized some of the problems of the Upanishads and tried to validate that in his problems in quantum physics. And you can read about Schrodinger and Upanishads. That's a separate story altogether. 500 BC, the Bhagavad Gita of Lord Krishna came in, which also talks about holism. At the same time, it talks about the duality. It gives you answer from both the aspects. Then comes the very popular Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which also talks about this principle. 600 CE, Tantra started evolving. So Tantra essentially focused on the dualistic approach. But again, it was focusing on the dualistic approach, but it was not ignoring the Vedic non-dual approach. The Advaita Vedanta that or rather the Vedanta which was popularized in the West by Swami Vivekananda, focused a lot on the non-dual aspects or the singular aspects of holistic science. And a part of it is used in energy medicine even today. 900 CE, moving on, we had Kashmir Shaivism, which also focused on the dualistic approach. So you can see, to make a long story short, India recognized, or Indian philosophical schools, way before the West, they recognized the advent of, or the presence of, they appreciated the presence of dualistic problems and the non-dualistic nature. No one actually were fighting with each other. Like the Vedic school was not fighting with the Tantric school. Rather, India recognized early on that there is a connection. It's just two phases of the problem: dualistic, non dualistic. But both coexist somewhere together. That was the idea that India has proposed long back. But what happens next? So, overall, we conclude here by going through the history that I have told you and the nice stories of Newton and Descartes and the Indian philosophy. People started realizing, and that's the model we still follow today, is that there is an overlap between the Newtonian and the quantum science field. They are not a separate field. There is a clear overlap. So as you can see, the yellow circle quantum science clearly overlaps with the Newtonian science. And again, I should remind you of the Descartes problem, that what unites the mind, which is a non-visible entity, with the body, which is the physical body? There is a gap. That's why when in this image you see that there is a question mark in between, because there is a gap, that what actually links quantum science and Newtonian science. Probably we have the answer today. So moving on, before going and giving you the answer, I want to give you some very practical everyday life examples to appreciate the differences and the commonalities within modern medicine and energy medicine. So first I'll talk about modern medicine, which has several limitations. Not to rule that out, it works on a linear system. It has a lot of limitations. First of all, unaffordability. Modern medicine is not affordable to all because of various socio-political, legal aspects across countries. We all know about it. Modern medicine, even today, lacks therapy for most chronic diseases. Even it doesn't have the answer, despite a lot of funding and research and everything, we haven't fully solved a lot of chronic diseases. There is a practical problem of staff burnout in modern medicine. A good example, go back and read all the media reports across different countries during the COVID-19. This happened a lot in hospitals. There were a lot of staff burnout. There were less people to address the needs of the patients. So this happened. We already faced this problem. And reduced personal care. Reduced personal care is also a property, or rather a feature, of modern medicine in some parts of the world, which doesn't have an extensive advanced palliative care kind of a program. So this is also a problem. Not to say it will never solve the problem, but probably I want to leave you with a thought that these problems can be addressed by filling up the gap with something which is complementary or which complements the limitations of the modern medicine. Because bear in mind that a linear system is bound to have limitations. What can fill up this gap? What can complement the problem of modern medicine? It's energy medicine. As simple as that. How can it do that? Again, I'll go through some quick points. Better reach. Energy medicine has a much better reach. It's efficient. Okay, it's much more efficient. You don't have to go through a lot of legalities and multiple steps. It's practical and in most cases non-invasive. You talk about Reiki, you talk about yoga, and many of the aspects, practices in the traditional Chinese medicine, they are mostly non-invasive. Energy medicine field empowers the patient. It gives a lot of empowerment to the patient, and it also strengthens the relationship between the patient and the coach. So you can clearly see, as we empower the patient, as we empower the relationship between the coach and the patient, energy medicine immediately tells something to you that we need healthcare practitioners, but we also need coaches or health coaches today. It's a very popular emerging field, and there is a need. Our economy needs these people to complement the modern medicine, to actually complement the shortage of staff, doctors, etc., etc. And it's a practical problem. That's why if you go to a lot of hospital nowadays, you will see that there is a section which practices modern medicine. At the same time, there is a section which practices aspects of energy medicine. So both are getting implemented slowly and steadily. And the last thing is quantum compatibility. Again, the field of energy medicine brings in or brings in some sort of an acceptability of quantum science into the Newtonian science. So it completes the gap, it completes the circle. But again, I'll go back to the Descartes question. What really connects the quantum science and the Newtonian science? What really connects the invisible aspects of the reality with the observed aspect of the reality? Do we have an answer as yet? I haven't told you for sure. Let's see what I have in the next slide. So I have an answer for you. So the visible Newtonian science is connected or linked somehow to the quantum science, which is mostly invisible, through a little window here. And this window is known as consciousness. A lot of neuroscientists, psychologists have spent years to study consciousness. It was very complicated, and that's why it was initially referred to as the hard problem of consciousness. But we have an answer now. And I have to tell you that it's not just the overlapping zone between the two circles you should focus on. It's also anything that surrounds the blue circle and the yellow circle. So consciousness is everything. Again, India has recognized consciousness several centuries ago, and it has referred to consciousness by different names, such as the origin of the sound or the primordial sound, Om, or the concept of the Brahman. It's all about this consciousness. And consciousness exists in two different phases. One, which we don't see. It's the wave nature of the particle, or it's a wave nature of the problem, which we don't see. It's mostly, incomprehensible. And now there is a particle nature of the problem, which we see, which falls under the Newtonian domain. So I think I can tell at this point that we identified again that how the quantum physicists have always proposed the wave particle duality, the unseen seen reality, the mind and the body reality. So they coexist. In modern medicine, even though now we know that mind is not brain, but mind is a byproduct of the brain. That's what is taught in the medical school. But we clearly know that mind is not the brain. Now, modern researchers have started feeling and started suggesting that there are many minds within the same human body. You might have heard this, that one of the second or primary, like second most important point in the human body, which is getting a lot of appreciation now for research, is the gut. And we call this the problem of the gut, or the gut microbiome field. It's called the second intelligence. So there is a mind of the gut as well. So mind is also, it's pervading everything, not just the physical brain. It's holistic too. So consciousness wraps everything. But why certain things exist as wave? but becomes particle. What causes this conversion? There are some experiments many years ago, mostly by quantum physicists, which has shown that certain phenomenon translates this wave invisible reality to a visible particle reality. So we see, as human beings, you and I, we see things when it comes to the particle reality. And nowadays we use a term a lot, that when we think about something, or we want to have something in our life. Someone wants to have a lot of money. This is imagination, this is wave. But all of a sudden a person might feel that he gets a lot of money, or he gets a lot of abundance. You are thinking of a person, within few years or months that person appears in front of you, or you develop a positive relationship with that person. So now you see it. This entire phenomenon is known as manifestation. So manifestation is the point when the wave element of quantum science gets translated into the particle or visible aspect of Newtonian science. And that is the main reason. And it happens through a midpoint, which is linked by a small window and also wrapped entirely by the bigger window of consciousness. So consciousness is everything. Newtonian science is also consciousness. So reality is particle, as well as the quantum science is also consciousness. Reality is also wave. But we have to do something to convert this wave to particle. The wave nature has to be converted into particle, and hence the wave particle duality of matter. Everything exists in the dynamic state. That's the point. So consciousness is actually the linker. And this is the basis of energy medicine today. But also in this talk, I have showed you that how beautiful it is to complement the energy medicine aspect with the Newtonian science or the modern medicine aspect. If they marry each other, and if it happens across every places, every hospital, every clinic of the world, the whole landscape of medicine, health, and wellness will change. We are probably dreaming of such a world. Maybe it will happen. It has started happening. So we just have to be positive. Is quantum science real? Is whatever I have told you, the wave particle duality, is it a real phenomenon, or it's just my imagination? There are many thousands of papers written on this, but I want to take you, and I would like you to take a peek into the Nobel Prize for Physics, which was awarded to three great scientists in 2022 on the exact problem. Just to summarize it, the problem which they focused on is suggestive that quantum science is an existing phenomenon. It does exist, and probably matter, or what we see, the material world, is just an extension of that, which is a byproduct of the quantum science or the quantum physics, which is real, but they are somehow connected. But quantum science does exist. It's not an imagination, and it's probably linked through consciousness. That is why a person sitting in US can somehow mentally connect with a person sitting in India. And this in terms of physicists, in their language, this connection is often referred to as entanglement. So we already got a Nobel Prize in entanglement, and that is the basis of many of the yogic phenomenon, many of the healing phenomenon that we do across a distance. That's entanglement, and now we have a Nobel Prize for that. So have a look at that, and probably you will have some fun reading more about it. So with that, I have come pretty much towards my last slide, which is here. But before I read this slide, I want you to stay and don't go away after I finish reading this slide, because I'll be coming back to you. But I want to tell you that I want to thank once again Nivedita for inviting me on behalf of Council Academy. And who we are Bleuauras. We are based in Canada. We provide global services to our clients scattered all over the globe pretty much. And on the right, you see the picture which I took in March. It was fairly winter here in Canada with my wife, who is also the co-founder of the company, Shyamosree. And we are specifically focusing on different aspects of energy medicine. Our common interest at this moment are yoga and the philosophy of yoga, the problem of Reiki and application of Reiki in the clinics, therapeutic art, therapy through art and design and shapes. That's something we are very interested in. We have just started. And also, the good news is we have recently collaborated with Council Academy, and we are extending some of our programs to a younger population, which are more pertinent to mind body development as well as education. If you want to follow us, we are on the social media. You just have to search us at Bleuauras. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and you can also check our YouTube channel or subscribe to it. If you want to communicate with me, you can do it through our social media or simply drop us an email at hello@bleuauras.com. So stay with me for a moment. I'll be back very soon to say a final goodbye. We are not done yet.
Thank you, Abhishek, for the enlightening talk. I learned a lot, and I'm sure anyone who listens to this presentation will get a new insight into the healing powers of positive energy. If any of our viewers have questions now or later, please feel free to write in the YouTube comments. Council Academy offers free monthly educational events for children and adults, and we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram to remain updated about our events. Before we end today's event, I am indeed very curious to know about Abhishek's personal journey, his own transformation to a healthier self with energy healing. Abhishek, could you please narrate to me and our viewers about the chronic condition you had and how energy healing changed your life? Thank you.
Okay, so I'm back again, and again, it's a pleasure interacting with all of you. As Nivedita mentioned, if you have any question, you can go and drop it in the YouTube. I know the time zones are different across the world, so you can always catch this webinar at the YouTube channel of Council Academy. Put your comments, subscribe to their YouTube channel. Hopefully, that will encourage us to bring more webinars like this informative webinar. So now to answer Nivedita's question, how I healed myself, to make a long story short, yes, I did. I followed very simple steps, and thankfully, to my surprise as well, I started my journey with the modern medicine or the Newtonian medicine, as I have just shown you. But somehow I was hitting a dead wall. So I was hitting a dead wall with medication. In other words, my doctors here in Canada told me that there is no more medicine, so I just have to be on steroids. Many years ago, I refused to have a life on steroids, and I started delving into energy medicine, and I came across some wonderful people, wonderful text, wonderful gurus and teachers, and learned how to heal myself through the power of a lot of things, but particularly Reiki and yoga. And I can very proudly tell you that I have pretty much reversed some of my chronic or major metabolic diseases. So I have reversed autoimmune disease in my body. I have also reversed, I had pre-diabetes, so I have reversed that, high cholesterol, and also obesity. All these problems I have reversed today, and it has led to a shift in my focus, in my consciousness, and I live a very different and a very happy life today. I can talk to you more personally if you have a question regarding how I heal myself. That's the short answer. And yes, before I forget, another aspect played a major role in my life, which is also a part of energy medicine, although I never focused on that in today's talk, is diet. So with all the practices and the meditation and the mindfulness, diet plays a major role, and it's a major hallmark of energy medicine. And we know a good diet, a clean diet, can increase your health span and lifespan. So that's all about it today. And thanks again for joining, and stay well, stay happy, and a lot of love and Reiki to you, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much. Namaskar.